you some more stories. I had one that I was going to tell about a fishing trip that I took a whole bunch of years ago. We used to leave Temple when I first started working for the highway department, and we would drive down on the coast to do some fishing. At that time, I had a real good fishing rig. I had a 14-foot boat that I had bought. It was a nice mahogany boat that was built by a friend of mine over here. I bought it from him. He lived over here close to Belton. It had a center deck in it and a seat there, and I had a 18 horsepower Evinrude on it. Back then, I had a pretty nice vehicle to pull it with. This was about 1954, 55 along in there, and I had bought a 1952 Mercury. Boy, it was a good little vehicle and sure was pretty. Wanda and I were proud of it. But anyway, I done a good bit of fishing, and back then I fished with Chuck, a whole lot. Chuck taught me just about everything that I knew about fishing. But anyway, this particular trip that I'm going to tell you about is Chuck and I both worked for the highway department. Back at about that time, they started giving us holidays. At that time, we got, I believe, May the 30th and June the 2nd. And that fell on the same week. We got a holiday on a Monday and we got a holiday on a Friday. So he and I was going to take advantage of that and head on down to the Gulf Coast to do some fishing. And we only had to take 3 days of our vacation because of those holidays. So we got down there and put this boat in and began to fish around. And we mainly used to go down there and catch those gaff top. Well, one day we didn't catch very many gaff top, so we decided we was going to fish for some trout. So at that particular time, they had live shrimp for bait. So we bought a quart of live shrimp, put them in our minnow bucket and dropped them over the side of the boat, and we was able to keep them alive. So we got out there in the bay and fished around, and we put some bait on our heavy lines and dropped them over the side for gaff top. Then we reached down and got this live shrimp that we had for bait. Well, about that time was when spinning tackle first come out. I had bought a spinning rod and reel, and I had brought that along. So this was what I was going to use to try to catch some trout. Think about a spinning line, how transparent it is, and how hard when you cast it out way out in the water somewhere, it's somewhere, it's hard to see the line because it's transparent. Well, I didn't rig up anything much different on that than what I use here. I had about this far up the line, I had a little weight, not a real heavy weight. Above that, I put on a float, a little plastic red and white float, like I use around here in Belton Lake or different places. So, this live shrimp that we had was pretty big shrimp. And I throwed that out there. We was pretty close to an oyster reef, and I thought it might be a good place to catch some of those speckled trout. Well, anyway, I headed out there for a good while, and I look every now and then. I'd look out there, and this old shrimp that I was using for bait, he was big enough to lift that float up and swim up on the top of the water. Well, lo and behold, in a minute, I got a bite on that shrimp. A trout come up and made a strike at that shrimp. And would you believe that I didn't hook the trout, but I felt him, and it jerked out of his mouth. And about the same time that trout bit my shrimp, here come a big old seagull diving down. He saw the shrimp on top of the water, and boy, he was going to go down and pick it up. But the fish bit it at the same time, but he didn't take it. And when it come out of that fish's mouth, the line come up as I jerked on it, and it flew up in the air at the same time that seagull come down. Lo and behold, that monofilament line came over and went all around that seagull's body. But at that moment, I did not know it. I felt something pull on my line and on my pole, and my rod just went over like that, and I was reeling in. I thought I had a trout, because the monofilament line, I couldn't see where it was at. And so I sat here and I began to reel in, and I was looking around to see, maybe where this fish was that I had caught. And I began to reel it in, and the strangest thing happened. Directly that rod began to go over my shoulder. I thought, what in the world is taking place? And I began to see why it was going over my shoulder, and I looked up, and lo and behold, here was this seagull right up above me, going around and around like that. And at that moment, I didn't know for sure that I had him hooked on my line until I looked on his chest, and there was my little red and white bobber, my little float. So I began to reel him in, and Chuck, he saw what had happened, and we was both amazed at this, and I reeled and brought that old seagull down, and he was still circling and flying, and when I got him close enough, Chuck reached up and got a hold of him so we could get him loose from my line. And when he got a hold of that old seagull, of course that seagull, I mean to tell you, he was, didn't know what was going on, I guess, and half scared. And he reached down and just bit a plug out of Chuck's hand. But we brought him in, undone the line, turned him loose. I come on back home, and I don't know if I told the story first or Chuck, but this one and that one we began to tell them about our trip down there and what had happened to me catching this seagull. And everybody that, friends of ours here, there, and yonder, boy, when I got back, I had to tell them the seagull story. And everywhere we went, I mean, we'd go off to Colorado in years later, and this one and that one would come up to me, and they'd want me to tell them the seagull story. Man, we sat there by the fire up there in our easy chairs, and all of Donald's kids and grandkids, they would all want me to tell them the seagull story. And when I would tell it, they'd just fall over and laugh. But I guess probably some of the people that got down the most about this was our preacher over at Eastside Baptist Church. His name was Howard Shute. And we would have fellowships in Fellowship Hall, and we would be over at people's houses with fellowships. And boy, when we would get together, I had to tell them the seagull story. And Howard Shute would fall over on the floor or on the couch, wherever he was sitting, and he would laugh until he couldn't hardly get his breath. Boy, I'm telling you, I had to tell that seagull story. And then, come a little later, in quite a few years, everybody began that traveled used to get CB radios to go in their vehicles, and of course we was proud of those, and we was talking back and forth. And Wanda was telling me a while ago, I had forgot, but one day we was in I guess it was a Safeway meat market down in Temple, where Eddie Larder was working. And we told Eddie that we had got a CB radio. He said, "Oh, Rodgers, I know what your handle is going to be. It's got to be the seagull." So that stuck with me. Everybody, Donald Graves, and oh Lordy, all my friends, John Landrum, and I can't remember all of them. Everywhere we went, everywhere we traveled, why, they laid the seagull handle on me. And I never did outlive it until finally we quit using CBs. So, that's kind of the story about that. All of you kids and grandkids, if you ever watch this tape and watch Papa as I tell some of these stories, Mom wanted me to tell you one, and I have to go back quite a few years. This was whenever I was a boy, about 14 years old, I lived down on Owl Creek. And oh, I loved to live down there. Back then, I had never lived anywhere where there was a creek that was flowing year round like Owl Creek. And oh, I loved to go down there. We would go down there and swim. We would go down there and fish. And the story I wanted to tell you about this, some of this, was Christmas came along. We didn't get a lot of gifts back then. We was poor farm people, and my mother and daddy had give me a real, back then they were popular for kids to wear, was a bracelet that went around your arm, and this bracelet that they gave me had a snap on it. Well, I was real proud of that. I would wear it to school, and everywhere I went, I didn't hardly ever pull it off. This particular day that I'm going to tell you about, I had gone down, got my rifle and gone down on Owl Creek, crossed Owl Creek, and I started up hunting. I stayed in the woods all of the time that I could. So I took off that day and started looking for squirrels and birds and anything that I could shoot with my .22 rifle. And I meandered all up the side of the Owl Creek Mountains. And I thought I'd tell you, it's a long, hard climb. There's not any trails. You just meander through the trees and anywhere you can find an opening to walk. I went up there and stayed the biggest part of the day. Went a long way. Come back, come down, come on back to the house, and lo and behold, I looked down on my arm. My bracelet wasn't there. Oh, I was sad. Well, I told Mother, she was there, that I was going to go back and try to remember where I had been on the Owl Creek Mountains and do my best to go over there and find it. Well, I took off, started up the side of the mountain, doing my best to remember where I had been, what trails I had took, what trees I had went around, where I had meandered up the side of that mountain. Lo and behold, I was cruising up the side of that mountain, probably made my way about 2/3 of the way up there. I looked up in front of me, and here was an old cedar tree that had fell down and been there for quite some time, I believe, but there was still some limbs across there. They weren't very high, probably about 14 or 18 inches off the ground, and there was a limb laying there, and I looked on that limb, believe it or not, there was my bracelet. I went right the same path that I had took going up there the first time when I lost it. Would you believe just about on top of Owl Creek Mountain I could walk up on something like that? Kinda hard for me to even believe myself how in the world that happened. But strange strange things happen, I guess. I just thought I'd tell you that story for what it's worth. Maybe you'll get a laugh out of it. I know I was tickled to death. We'll tell you some more stories, okay?
You haven't used all of your time.
Well, I'll finish up by telling you a story about one time that Donald Graves and I were in Colorado fishing, and at those particular years, Donald used to always carry his boat. So we would put the boat in this little lake, and we would go out and we would troll. So we got ready to fish that day, and I had my rod and reels under my arm, and Donald was following right behind me. And we stepped over in the boat, and I started making my way to the back so I could operate the motor, and Donald was getting ready to untie the boat, and we'd push out into the water. And about that time, Donald said something to me. Well, I'm so hard to hear him, I kind of turned around to him and I said, "Huh?" And when I did, I turned like that, and would you believe the hooks on the end of my rod caught Donald in the ear, and we were down there on the lake, and we tried and tried to get the hook out, and we couldn't. So we had to just walk very easily back to camp and show Wanda and Sadell what had happened, and Donald's son Roger was there. Well, Donald sat down on the bench, and I got a pair of pliers out and some cutters and began to try to cut the barb off of that hook. And as it so happened, Roger Graves was there eating lunch, and he sat there in front of Donald and began to eat soup out of a bowl, and he would just he was just laughing all the time I was trying to get that hook out of Donald's ear. And I did in a minute. I cut the barb off and we released the hook. After a while, we went back to fishing.
Go ahead. You've got 5 more minutes. Tell something else.
A lot of times in that lake, we would really catch the trout. And one year we were fishing there, and boy, trout fishing was good. We'd go out, and Wanda would go with us, and then Sadell and Donald would go out, and boy, we began to build up a lot of fish in our refrigerators. And we was waiting until we had quite a few fish so that all of this bunch could have a fish fry. Well, we got ready one day, and we laid the fish out on the table. We were so proud of them, we wanted to take some pictures of them. And there's no telling how many fish we had over our limit that we could keep. I mean, we would catch our daily bag limit every day, but after a while you can only keep so many. And we laid them out there and took those pictures. And I'm telling you, if the game warden had come along, he would have put us under the jail. No telling what would have happened.
Tell them about the day at Shaw Lake. Maybe you'll have enough time.
Oh, yeah, we fished there, oh golly, for a lot of years. One particular year, Sadell and Wanda and Donald and myself went up to this little lake above there and catching trout. And that lake had bigger trout in it. And lo and behold, we began to catch trout. I'm telling you, they were biting that day. And we caught over our limit. Donald said, well, I believe we're going to have to throw some of these fish back in the lake. Wanda said, no, we're not. Said, give me them fish. I'll put them in my purse. And lo and behold, she had a purse full of fish, and then we had the rest of them on a strangler that we took back to camp. Of course, when we got there, well, we had to clean quite a few fish.
And I had to throw my purse away.
Yep, Wanda had to clean her purse out. It was, it smelled like fish. I think she had a bag that she put them in. Yeah. We had some bags with us that day, so worked out all right. We had lots of fun.